And State Representative John Patterson is our guest. We got lots to talk about. One thing is you were able to corral some bigwigs from Columbus to Conneaut. I think it was last week.
Last Monday, yes.
And there was a big meeting at City Hall and a tour of the city. And so tell us about all of that.
Well, Jim Hockaday and I, and Jim's a great city manager. I'm really a big fan of his. We talked for a long time how it was important to have Jobs Ohio come up from Columbus and see the potential that Conneaut has. And that's really the framework around which this meeting was designed, to bring them out here, Team Neo, and to talk about some of the economic development, especially knowing that the Reesburg pipeline is, as we speak, under construction.
Oh, yeah, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere, and it's there have been no calls to my office yet. I mean, they've been very courteous about property owners and making sure the roadways are clear and such. But that pipeline is going to change life as we know it in Conneaut, in Ashtabula. Well, we wanted Jobs Ohio to understand the full potential of Conneaut's harbor. And the fact that it is an absolutely golden jewel in our crown. So a tour was given of the facility, the CN facility.
So were they a little reluctant because of the distance?
Yeah, always because of the distance. In fact, my colleagues tease me about having to have a passport when they visit Conneaut. They wonder how my French is. Both of those are obviously not important.
I was near Harrisburg, and we're not that close to Harrisburg either. So
that's true. But they were very favorably impressed, and it was a meet and greet. It's one thing for them to know that Conneaut exists. It's another thing for them to see our port, see our potential, and see the future that Conneaut holds. So it was very productive, and heads turned, and that was the important thing.
You like bringing people into Ashtabula County. Remember you had the agriculture committee here once, and you went from Harpersfield to Conneaut, showing them around?
Miscanthus grass and maple syrup and fish farms.
Yeah.
We have the most diverse agricultural district in the state, and it was important for the Ag Committee to see that. And if you think about it, it's not just traditional row crops like soybeans and corn and wheat and that sort of thing. It's also, we have the fish farms. We have an elk farm. Did you realize that?
Is that over in Jefferson?
Yeah, north of Jefferson there. And we used to have some bison farms. We have those specialties. We have maple syrup. We have the wine industry. We have dairy. We have beef. About the only thing we don't raise well is oranges and grapefruit. So maybe we'll work on that.
Yeah.
But any time that I can show my colleagues and let them experience Ashtabula County, it's absolutely phenomenal. And to that extent, in September, the Fish Ohio project is going to be coming back again to Northeast Ohio. There will be legislators and members from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources fishing here on a day so that they can understand how beneficial the fisheries are to us. I mean, every launch out of Conneaut brings in $72 in terms of gas, lodging, food, fish cleaning, licenses, you name it. It's pretty big business, and we are absolutely harvesting walleye like crazy this year. It's an exciting year on the lake, and I want them to know what we have here in terms of fishing. So again, anytime I can bring Columbus here is something I get excited about.
And so the city manager was there also, Sean O'Brien, the state
yes,
senator
O'Brien was there, and members of Team Neo and other economic development specialists.
So once they hear about things that could go to Conneaut or projects that we have here, they're going to be able to put faces, they're going to be able to put locations, that sort of thing.
Absolutely correct. Yep. Now,
speaking of Sean O'Brien, there's something else I wanted to talk a little bit about, and that is the nuclear power.
Yes.
Saving the nuclear power plants, and it was signed, the middle of last month by Governor DeWine.
Yes.
And you're both Democrats, but you voted for it, and it seems like Sean O'Brien thought, we're paying enough in electricity costs, and we shouldn't have to bail them out.
was a difficult vote, and on both sides. And let me explain Senator O'Brien's position to some extent, and then I'll explain my own. In Lordstown, there is currently under construction one gas-fired electric plant, a huge facility. And the feeling from the gas industry is that we in Ohio are favoring the nuclear industry over them by giving them this bailout. The other thing that factored into Senator O'Brien's vote, and I'm sure that he would speak to this, is the fact that when Lordstown closed, we didn't offer them a bailout. So what's different about a nuclear industry? My position was a little different. When Lordstown closed, and it breaks my heart, but you can't stop an auto plant from moving.
Right.
A nuclear plant, however, isn't going anywhere.
Right.
It is what it is. And the electricity that is produced by Perry and Davis-Besse comprise about 16 to 18% of our total portfolio. We have over 40% gas, and it's still emerging, gas, as one thing that we can depend on. We have over 40% coal still, but only 2% solar and wind. So what's that have to do with anything? Well, the few days after that particular vote, we had a weather challenge here when we had a heat wave. Imagine that, Northeast Ohio. And there was an incredible draw upon our electric grid. Excuse me. The Perry facility allows us to meet those high peaks, both in the summer and in the winter. And the deal is only good for 6 years. My feeling is until we are up to speed with the solar, with the wind, with the gas, in other words, until our portfolio is totally diversified, it would be difficult. In fact, I would be remiss in my duties if I did not do what I could to make sure that we had sufficient electricity. And so for the need of electricity alone was important for me. Finally, 200 people who live in Ashtabula County work at the Perry plant. And I spoke with City Manager Doug Starkey
Geneva.
the Friday before this vote, and I said, Doug, what do you think? He said, John, it's critically important for Geneva's livelihood and for Ashtabula County. Good paying jobs with benefits and the tax base too. So in that particular vote, I put the needs of our district ahead of the other areas of the state because for us, it's critically important. I don't like the fact that they have made some ill-advised business decisions. I can't change that. But I do know we need electricity. And I do know we need jobs. And really, if Conneaut, if Ashtabula is going to take off, and hearkening back to our Jobs Ohio visit, you have to have a steady supply of electricity. So my union folks, my people who are engaged in government in Northeast Ohio were thrilled with that vote. The environmentalists weren't because there were some rollbacks, embarrassing as they were. But I can only vote on a bill as it's presented. My argument was we need the power now, and in the next 6 years, let's work to restore some of those incentives and return to the pathway of diversifying our portfolio and looking more towards solar and wind to do just that.
You tell industries that may want to come in, well, we've got the natural gas now, but the electricity we have, we may not have.
Right, that would be very difficult to do.
Yeah.
So it was a tough vote, and I agonized over it, wanting to do what's right in the long term, and you have to balance that. When I say long term, what will this look like in 20, 40 years? I mean, we know there's an end date to the Perry plant, and they need to be looking for that. In terms of closing down and decommissioning. On the other hand, we are going to need that power now. We have the Petland project going up in Ashtabula right after the Reesburg lines committed, and they're going to need a lot of electricity too. We just shut it down and rely on a grid. I couldn't do that to my people. So I took the tough vote, made the decision, and we'll see what happens.
John Patterson, State Representative, is our guest. And this recording, it was just a few days ago, the Dayton shooting, 9 people dead. And I know that there's some legislation that might liberalize concealed carry in the state. Do you think this shooting will impact that? The vote on something like that?
It could. I also know that there is some legislation, and Governor DeWine just yesterday made a statement that everything's on the table for him. And that would include, he has proposed some red flag legislation too that caused great angst among some people. Look, Bob, here's the key. We know we have a problem. We know we have social isolation for some of our people. We know we have frustration. We know we have hate groups that are functioning out there, and there's unrest and there's frustration. It's time for us to put all of that on the shelf and put our partisan politics on the shelf and have a reasonable, civil conversation about where we want to go as a society. We cannot continue to go down this path. And I support the Second Amendment, but like the First Amendment, it's important to remember that our rights are not all absolute. I just can't say anything. I just can't gather anywhere. There are limits to that, and there may need to be, as long as it is lawful with respect to the intent of the Second Amendment, we've got to balance our society's need for safety with our society's right to own guns. And I get that, and that's where the conversation has to take place in that arena. This is not atypical for government to have clashing interests, but it's through that legislative process, through that middle ground, rational conversations involving common sense, that we can come up with something, I believe, that's workable for everybody. May not like it totally, but we have to get along, and we have to figure out a pathway so that our people feel safe, so our law enforcement is safer, and so that we don't keep having these tragedies.
And I think it's a double whammy, the fact that there was the one in Texas, then a few hours later, Dayton. And I believe it was something that Governor DeWine was at, where people were chanting, "Do something."
Yes,
yeah.
there was a vigil last night in Dayton, and it is incumbent upon us to do something. And former Governor Kasich wanted to do something, but the majority party that has the votes was not compelled to move. I think there are reasonable people on both sides of the aisle that have to craft something that, again, seeks to balance the need for life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness with our Second Amendment rights. And just for people to go to their corners and not engage in that conversation is irresponsible too. It's a time for leadership. It's in time to engage in a positive way.
We need an open dialogue on this.
Heavens, yes. It's think of it, we are all part of a family. And I don't know about you, but there are times when my wife and I do not agree. And we, in my men's Sunday school class, you're laughing, you know exactly what I'm talking about, call those moments of intense fellowship. When we're part of a family, we're going to get through this somehow, but we have to have those conversations. And we haven't had those really difficult conversations.
And let's hope that this isn't all forgotten in a few weeks, that we go back and do nothing.
Right.
John Patterson, State Representative, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Always great to be in the sharpest corner of the state.
Absolutely.